going to move on to the ACC, a game that I think is a bit of a toss-up because I don't know, man. I feel like Florida State's in a bit of a bad spot. I really feel like they're in a bit of a bad spot because this is a Louisville team that when they come off of losses this season, which is albeit not often, they come out and roll. Like we've seen them against good competition, and then they generally roll. And they like to play that explosive passing game with Jamari Thrash, and then they hand it back to Jawar Jordan, 6.5 yards per attempt, some of the best in the country. Jack Plummer, I need a big game from him. If Louisville wants to win this football game, because this is the Florida State pass rush, it's pretty good. And they had 3 turnovers last week, plus they turned it over on downs again against Kentucky. It's a rivalry game. Weird things happen. But if you're going to be turning the ball over, you're going to give this game away. But if I'm Florida State, I really don't know what to make of Tate Rodemaker's performance. I think he, so in quarterbacks, like when they're in practice,
I'll tell you, because
when they're in practice, they wear those green jerseys, the non-contact jerseys, and you see people flying around you, but they don't hit you, right? Early in that Florida game, it felt like everything was happening so fast. He settled in a little bit.
He grew throughout that game quite a bit.
He grew
quite a bit. Yeah.
And Louisville can get after the passer pretty well. That's where that gives me pause, because this isn't one of those games where Rodemaker is going to be able to drop back and have time in the pocket to get the ball to Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. I need Trey Benson to have a big game. So those are my 2 things. I need Jack Plummer to play well and not turn the ball over, and then I need Trey Benson to win the day. Those are your 2 guys.
Yeah, you hit on the key matchup to me. If Trey Benson does what he did against Florida, which was 95 yards and 3 touchdowns on under 20 carries, they're winning this game. I mean, look, that's the matchup. Louisville's 12th in the country against the run. They allow under 100 yards per game to the opponent's running. And so that's the big matchup to me. And it's kind of similar to what I said about Florida State against Florida. Is let your guys do the work. It's not on Rodemaker's shoulders to win this game. Yeah. Johnny Wilson was outstanding in the game against Florida. Big man target. Keon Coleman stepped up in the second half. And then, as you mentioned, Trey Benson. Let your guys do the work. Mm-hmm. And then for Louisville, it's 2 things. You mentioned the loss last week, the health of Thrash and Jawar Jordan, how close to 100%. And then the other aspect to this is, and this is the last thing I'll say on this game, and I'll let you respond. I know it's a neutral site game. It's in Charlotte. But Louisville away from home has been less than impressive. And so you have to ask the question about what level of play they're going to have in a neutral site. It's going to be ugly weather-wise. Rain is expected. So we'll also see how that may play a role too.
Ooh, I haven't actually checked the weather yet. That's a very interesting one. Yeah, so if they're not able to keep those explosive plays going, if the weather is so bad that they can't really get that electric passing attack going, that's an interesting thing to watch. So they have the one neutral site game this year where they played against Georgia Tech, which is, I guess, a neutral site game if you really want to call it that.
Look, Georgia Tech's pretty good, but they barely won that game.
They dropped 39 points. Like, that's the thing, though. Like, but that was also just a not very good Georgia Tech defense. I'm not going to pretend here, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think Florida State's in a bad spot. I think the matchups favor Louisville in this game. Because normally at the end of the day, it's like if the matchups would have favored them, even if Jordan Travis was playing in this game, but I would have sided with Florida State because you have the dude. Because you have the dude, and this is an illusion. Agreed. This is a little precursor, a little foreshadowing to what we're going to talk about with the Pac-12 title game. You have that dude playing quarterback for you, and I'll let you determine which team I'm talking about there. You have that dude playing football for you. That's the difference maker. That dude is not playing football for Florida State on Saturday. That's the difference. This is a Louisville team, which, respect to your Florida Gators, is a much better football team. A much better football team all season, a much more consistent football team, a team with actual, legitimate playmakers that in the pinch you can turn to. I know who those guys are for Louisville. I don't know if Florida State's dudes are necessarily going to be enough to overcome the loss of their chief dude, Jordan Travis. He is he is paramount to what that offense wants to do. when Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson go down, that was the difference, you know? And I feel like at the end of the day, it's like Florida State is favored in this game. They're favored in this game. But if Louisville doesn't lose to Kentucky, which, again, at the end of the day, they lost, so I'm speculating, and this is all ridiculous and not based in reality, but they win last week, they're coming into this game and they're favored. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I agree with you. I think the loss of Jordan Travis is wildly understated in terms of, I understand he's not the greatest quarterback in college football, but I think what he meant to that team and the chemistry he had to make those guys the playmakers they were, you just can't recreate that no matter how good your arm is if you're Automaker. And so it's going to be interesting. Look, they what they don't want to do is force him to throw the ball more than he did a week ago. He threw the ball 25 times, and that's probably on the high end. If you're having success running the ball, that's your path to victory if you're Florida State. Yes, you want to get the ball into the hands of Wilson and Coleman and even Jaheim Bell at times too, because he's a matchup issue. Mm-hmm. But you've also got to protect your offense and limit your output and potential for mistakes. And that unfortunately means Rodemaker shouldn't be throwing the ball more than 20, 22 times in this game. And if he does and is efficient when he does, that's how you win if you're Florida State.
I think this is an interesting game for Jeff Brom, his first ACC championship, Louisville's first ACC championship game appearance since they joined the conference about a decade ago. They have a chance to have their first 11-win season since 2012. You got a lot on the line if you're the Louisville Cardinals. You can really throw the conference for a loop if you go out and beat Florida State, because if Florida State wins this game, they're in the college football playoff. Ignore the naysayers. They're ridiculous. They don't know what they're talking about. There is an undefeated conference champion. An undefeated conference champion is making the college football playoff. Don't get it twisted. But that said, this Louisville defense, they played really well early in the season. I think they've regressed a little bit recently. I'm not going to sit here and speculate as to why, because this is a defense that allowed Virginia to average 6.4 yards per play. Miami averaged 7.5 yards per play, and Kentucky averaged 6.2 yards per play. Those three offenses, which I would say none of those three are necessarily world beaters of offense, they averaged 31 points. So there's been a little bit of regression from this Louisville defense, but I think Jeff Brom and company on offense, that is where the difference is going to be made. Abe, did you have any more comments on this game before we move on real quick?
No, look, if Louisville has more explosive play, I think this may be an explosive play game, whichever team.
Sure, yeah.
Because if Florida State can get that out of Wilson and Coleman because Rodemaker's finding them, that's going to greatly. But on the flip side of Louisville, who's just generally an explosive offense, if they can get their guys going for long run, long passes, get thrashed in space, same with Jordan. I mean, look out.
I think this makes for truly a fascinating football game.